October 11th, 1492, 2 in the morning. A sailor named Rodrigo de Triana is standing watch on the bow of a ship called the Pinta. The crew has been at sea for over 5 weeks without seeing land. Some of them wanted to turn back weeks ago. Rodrigo looks out into the darkness, and he sees a white cliff glowing in the moonlight. He screams one word, tierra, land. He fires a signal cannon. The ships anchor and wait for dawn. In the morning, the admiral comes ashore on a small island in what we now call the Bahamas. He plants a flag. He declares this island the property of the King and Queen of Spain. He names it San Salvador. He calls the people he finds there Indians, because he is completely certain he has reached the coast of Asia. He was wrong. He had found something that no map in Europe showed. An entire world that roughly 60 million people already called home. And he spent the rest of his life insisting, against all evidence, that it was Asia. That is the story of Christopher Columbus, a man who did something extraordinary and never understood what it was. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Cristoforo Colombo was born in the Republic of Genoa in 1451. Genoa was a wealthy port city on the northwestern coast of what is now Italy, one of the great maritime trading cities of the Mediterranean. His father was a wool weaver, a craftsman of moderate means. Columbus grew up near the harbor. He went to sea as a teenager making short trading voyages. He traded in wine and wool. He sailed as far as the Aegean Sea. He may have sailed as far north as Iceland. He sailed south along the African coast as far as what is now Ghana. By his mid-20s, he was an experienced sailor who had seen more of the world than most people of his time. Then in 1476, everything changed. Columbus was sailing on a Genoese merchant convoy off the coast of Portugal when French privateers attacked. His ship was set on fire and sank. Columbus grabbed a floating oar and swam roughly 6 miles to shore. He was 24 years old. He made it. He went to Lisbon, Portugal, where his brother was working as a chart maker. And this is where the obsession began. Portugal in the 1470s was the leading maritime nation in the world. Portuguese sailors had been pushing south along the African coast for decades, looking for a sea route to Asia. Spices, silk, gold. A sea route directly to Asia would be worth an almost incomprehensible fortune. Columbus immersed himself in this world. He taught himself Latin, Portuguese, and Spanish. He read everything he could find. Marco Polo's account of his travels in Asia, classical texts about geography, letters from a Florentine geographer who believed Asia could be reached by sailing west across the Atlantic. Now here is the critical detail. The idea of sailing west to reach Asia was not crazy. Educated Europeans had known the Earth was round since ancient times. The flat Earth story is a myth. What was debated was the size of that sphere, and Columbus made a catastrophic error. He underestimated the circumference of the Earth. He overestimated how far Asia stretched east. He combined these two mistakes and concluded that Asia was roughly 2,400 miles west of the Canary Islands. The actual distance is closer to 12,000 miles. He was wrong by a factor of 5. Every serious geographer who examined his proposal told him so. He ignored them all. In 1484, Columbus took his proposal to the King of Portugal. Rejected. His advisors correctly pointed out that the math was wrong. He tried Genoa, rejected. Venice, rejected. He went to Spain in 1486 and presented his plan to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. They were interested but busy. Spain was in the middle of a war. They put Columbus on a small retainer and told him to wait. He waited for 6 years. 6 years of lobbying and arguing and being told he was wrong. His wife died during this period. He had a young son to raise. He had almost nothing. But he did not stop. In January 1492, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain fell. The monarchs finally turned their attention to Columbus. They agreed to fund the voyage. And the terms they gave him were extraordinary. If he succeeded, he would be made Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Governor and Viceroy of any lands he discovered. 10% of any wealth found in those territories, all of it hereditary, passed to his children forever. Columbus had negotiated hard for these terms. He had walked away from the table once when they offered less. They called him back. He got almost everything he asked for. On August 3, 1492, Columbus sailed from the port of Palos in southern Spain. 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Niña, about 90 men. On September 6th, he departed the Canary Islands and turned west into open ocean. No European ship had ever sailed this far west and returned. For 5 weeks they sailed. The crew grew frightened. There were whispers of mutiny. Columbus kept 2 logs. One showed the real distance they had sailed each day. The other showed a smaller number for the crew, so they would not realize how far from home they had gone. On October 7th, the crew spotted large flocks of birds flying southwest. Columbus changed course to follow them. That decision almost certainly saved the expedition. If he had continued due west, he would have hit Florida. Instead, he hit the Bahamas. And then came that night, Rodrigo de Triana's cry of land. Now here is a detail that tells you a lot about Columbus. Ferdinand and Isabella had promised a lifetime pension to the first person to sight land. Columbus later claimed he had seen a light from land a few hours before Rodrigo spotted those cliffs. He took the pension for himself. Rodrigo de Triana, the man who actually saw land first, received nothing. Columbus was brave and visionary and relentless. He was also self-interested in ways that could be ruthless. On the morning of October 12th, Columbus came ashore. The island was inhabited by the Taino people. They came to the beach with curiosity and offered gifts. Columbus wrote in his journal that they were a gentle and generous people. He also wrote that they would make good servants. He seized 6 of them that first day. He spent the next several months sailing through the Caribbean, Cuba, Hispaniola. He was looking for gold. He was looking for the cities of Asia that Marco Polo had described. He found islands and people and some gold ornaments. He did not find the Great Khan of China. He did not find anything close to the wealth he had promised his sponsors. On Christmas Day 1492, the Santa Maria ran aground on the coast of Hispaniola. Columbus used the timber to build a small fort called La Navidad. He left 39 men there and sailed home on the Niña. He arrived back in Spain in March 1493. He brought parrots and gold ornaments and several Taino people. He was received as a hero. Ferdinand and Isabella welcomed him at court. His titles were confirmed. Within weeks, a second expedition was being prepared. 17 ships, 200 men. Settlers this time, not just sailors. When Columbus returned to Hispaniola on the second voyage, he found La Navidad destroyed. All 39 men were dead. They had mistreated the local Taino population and been killed in retaliation. What followed over the next several years was a catastrophe. Columbus needed to show Spain something valuable. He chose slaves. In 1495, he organized the capture of roughly 1,500 Taino people. About 500 were loaded onto ships. Around 200 died during the crossing. Most of the survivors died shortly after arriving in Spain. Columbus imposed a tribute system on the Taino of Hispaniola. Every adult was required to deliver a set quantity of gold every 3 months. The penalty for failure was mutilation. The Taino hid in the mountains. They starved rather than face the consequences. Disease was also devastating the population. Smallpox, influenza, measles. The Taino had no immunity. Within 60 years, a population of 250,000 or more had been reduced to a few hundred people, an entire civilization gone. Columbus as a governor was a disaster. Brilliant navigator, terrible administrator. His rule was chaotic and violent. In 1500, Ferdinand and Isabella sent an investigator. He arrived and found Spanish men hanging from the gallows. Columbus had ordered their execution. Columbus and his brothers were arrested, put in chains, shipped back to Spain. The admiral of the ocean sea, back in irons. Columbus reportedly refused to have the chains removed even after he was released. He kept them. He said he would be buried with them. He still had one more voyage in him. In 1502, he sailed for the fourth and final time. He explored the coast of Central America, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. He was miles from the Pacific Ocean without knowing it. The route he had dreamed of was almost under his feet. He never found it. His ships were falling apart, riddled with wood-boring worms from the tropical waters. He was forced to beach his remaining ships on the coast of Jamaica. He and his men were stranded there for over a year. Now, this is one of the most extraordinary moments in the story. The local people had stopped providing food. Columbus's men were going hungry. He consulted an astronomical almanac and found that a total lunar eclipse was coming on February 29, 1504. He summoned the local chiefs. He told them his god was angry and would take away the moon. That night, the moon went dark. The Taino were terrified. They begged Columbus to restore it. He went to his cabin and waited until the eclipse was nearly over. Then he came out and said his god had forgiven them. The moon returned. Food resumed. One of the most audacious tricks in the history of exploration. Columbus returned to Spain in November 1504. He was 52 years old and exhausted and ill. Queen Isabella, his strongest supporter, died 3 weeks after he arrived. He spent his last 2 years writing letter after letter to the royal court, fighting for the restoration of his titles, fighting for the money he believed he was owed. Ferdinand ignored him. Columbus died on May 20, 1506, in Valladolid, Spain. He died believing he had reached Asia. He died believing he had been cheated of everything he was owed. He died not knowing that the lands he found would reshape the entire world. And he died not knowing that his name would be attached to almost none of it. 2 years before Columbus died, a Florentine explorer named Amerigo Vespucci published letters arguing that what had been found was not Asia. It was a new continent. In 1507, a German cartographer published a new map of the world. He labeled the new continent America, after Amerigo, not after Columbus. What Columbus set in motion is called the Columbian Exchange. It is one of the most significant events in the last 1,000 years. Potatoes, tomatoes, corn, chocolate, chili peppers went from the Americas to the rest of the world. Horses, cattle, wheat, sugar, coffee went the other way. Think about that. Italian food without tomatoes, Irish food without potatoes, Indian food without chili peppers. All of it impossible without the crossing Columbus made in 1492. But diseases also crossed. European diseases devastated populations across the Americas. Most estimates suggest that between 50 and 90% of the indigenous population died in the century following Columbus's landing. Disease was the primary killer. Violence, forced labor, and starvation were also catastrophic. Columbus did not cause all of this alone. The colonizers who came after him carried the process much further, but he opened the door, and the things that came through it, good and terrible both, came because of what he did. So who was Christopher Columbus? He was a self-educated son of a wool weaver who taught himself navigation and 4 languages and convinced the most powerful monarchs in Europe to fund the most consequential sea voyage in history. He was wrong about where he was going. He was wrong about what he found. He was also brave in a way that is almost impossible to measure. To sail west into an ocean nobody had crossed, with 90 men and 3 small ships, required a kind of courage that sits very close to madness. He was also capable of seizing 6 people on the first day he met them, of enslaving people he described in his own journal as gentle and generous. He held both of those things at once, the courage and the cruelty, the vision and the blindness. His legacy has been contested ever since. Columbus Day is still a federal holiday in the United States, but dozens of cities and several states have replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day. The debate about what he represents is not settled. It is probably not settleable. What is settled is this. On October 12, 1492, a man from Genoa came ashore on a beach in the Bahamas and changed the world permanently. He never knew what he had found. But we are all still living in the world he made. That is the story of Christopher Columbus. Thank you for listening today. One question before you go. Leave your answer in the comments. Columbus is celebrated by some as a brave explorer who changed the world. He is condemned by others for the suffering his voyages caused. Is it possible to hold both things true at the same time? Or does one cancel out the other? Tell me what you think. There is no right answer. I read every comment. If today's episode helped your English, please share it with one person. My name is John. Thank you for learning with me. See you in the next episode. Take care. Goodbye for now.